So there's only been a couple other food and beverage distilleries that have actually popped up because it is so expensive to get everything going. So we're unique in a couple ways. We are the first distillery in a national park in North America. We are the closest distillery to a glacier on the planet. So we have a really good water source here. And then of course we're in the national park. So we have lots of environmentalists that live in this area. So we had to be very, very careful with what we were doing and reuse absolutely everything that goes into the still gets reused. So we actually sell part of the liquor off to the bike shops in town and they use it as a chain degreaser. We sell the mash when we're done with it back to the farmer and he uses it as feed for his cattle. So everything kind of goes full circle here. So pretty cool. The point of this distillery and the reasoning behind it was we wanted to give the 2 million people that come to Banff every year a little bit of Banff to take home with them. So we use Banff water, which is glacier fed within 30 minutes of the town here. And we use Alberta grains. So we source all of our grains within 110 kilometers of Banff, meaning just right outside of Calgary. We use a single family farm and they grow 100% organic, non-GMO grains for us. We use 2 different types of grains right now for our products. So we have 5 products, 4 vodkas, 1 rye. The rye is made with 100% Alberta organic rye, and the vodka is made from 100% Alberta organic triticale. Has anyone ever heard of triticale before? No? Farmers call it trip. It's a grain that's been around since the 1800s. It was invented in Scotland. It's a hybrid of a red wheat and a rye. So basically the 2 had a love child and they called it triticale. So it's the pepperiness of a rye and the sweetness of a wheat in one grain. It flourishes here in Alberta. We started growing it in North America about 120 years ago. So it flourishes here and we actually, it flourishes just outside of Calgary. So the reasoning behind using a grain that isn't very well known, it's much more of a cereal grain really. If you went to Safeway right now and looked down the cereal aisle, almost 80% of the cereals say triticale on them. It's a little bit sweeter, so especially for health cereals, they don't have to add sugar, they can just use triticale. But the reasoning behind us using this grain was there's over 700 different brands of vodka out there right now. How do we make ourselves different? Yeah, 700 different vodkas. So we're never going to compete with the Polish and the Russian vodkas. We're never going to compete with a potato-based vodka. It's just such a different flavor than a grain base. So the reasoning was, why not do something different? So we are actually the only vodka on the planet using triticale as our base.
So 701.
Yeah, 701 different brands of vodka out there, and more are coming. So,
is not potato.
Well, we would never compare to a potato. Yeah, we would never compare to a potato-based vodka. Just the grain base is such a different flavor than potato. So we're never going to compare. We're never going to compete with those really famous award-winning vodkas out there. But we are a craft distillery, so we're not afraid of a little bit of flavor in our product. So the triticale gives off a little bit of sweetness, and you actually do get that sweetness in our vodka. So when everyone does a tasting after, you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to take you through, we're going to start here because this is the prettiest part, but I'm going to take you through the back rooms as well, show you our mashing and fermenting tanks, show you our grain room, and then finish off with the filtering and the bottling process. So we're just going to start here right now. So this beauty behind me is a still from Kota, a company out of Germany built this for us, custom space for this room. Because we live in Banff, we are on a set footprint. So you can't just go build any building that you want here in town. You have to use stuff that's already here, and you can renovate, but you can't exactly build the ground up. So we were a little bit stifled by what kind of space we could use. So luckily we had this building when that law was changed. And as soon as it was changed, we closed her down, shut down the Italian restaurant, and started building this distillery. So Kota came out and built this custom space for this space for us. It is a 5 millimeter thick copper still. So one of the thickest copper stills that you can buy on the market.
How did you pick these guys?
They are known as the Rolls Royce of stills. So this is the most expensive company that you can buy from. Essentially, we are supposed to have this for about 100 years. It has a 100-year lifespan. So even though it is a lot of money up front, it does last longer because of the thickness of the copper. So we plan to be here for at least 100 more years, hopefully. So we wanted to invest in the best that's out there. So we clean this out by hand once a week just to keep that lifespan good. We also clean it when we change grain. So if we're changing from rye to triticale or vice versa. we take the whiskey helmet off and we clean it out by hand. So our master distiller is actually right, I just saw him walk by the window. He's smaller than me. Get in there, no problem. So he cleans it up by hand, and then we have like special brushes to clean up the rectification columns. So that everything starts in the back. We wanted to start with our rye product because ideally we want a rye whiskey. In Canada, you have to age in any type of barrel for 3 years minimum before we can attach the name whiskey to the label. So the first thing that we did was mash our rye grain in the back, transfer it up here to the front into this distilling pot, and we steam heat this with that stainless steel jacket up to 78 degrees Celsius. So at 78 is when ethanol starts to boil. Methanol boils at a little less than that. Methanol is the stuff that when people are making moonshine and they drink a little bit too much of the head cut, they're drinking that methanol, which is of course poisonous. So you hear those stories about someone going blind. They really don't know the difference between the methanol and the ethanol. So at 78, we get those ethanol vapors rising through the whiskey helmet. They transfer across the pipe, across these two columns, and down this condensing tank right here. Condensing literally meaning condensing back down to a liquid. So the vapors condense and come out of this tap just as water does out of your sink tap. And they come out in 3 parts: the head, the heart, and the tail. The head is the methanol vapors that first boiled off. So the first part is called the head cut, which is methanol. The heart cut is the ethanol cut. That's the good stuff, the stuff that we like to drink, nice and smooth. And then the tail is a little bit diluted and parts of the mash, not quite as thick and juicy as that heart center cut. So we here at Park do a true heart cut of all of our products. So after about 60 liters, we find that we get out of that methanol and into that ethanol. Then our master distiller will sit here, lining up mason jars, filling them, numbering them, smelling and tasting them until he's happy making the heart cut.
That's a good
So that takes about 15 hours every time he does a heart cut on a product.
Tasting it, you would know the difference.
That's a nice.
It's mostly his nose. It's mostly his nose, and then it literally is just like a little dip of his pinky when he starts to, and he's getting like every time he does one, he gets way better at it. One master distiller does all of our heart cuts because if it was someone else, everyone's senses are a little bit different.
Yeah.
So he does all of the heart cuts for us, and he is really good at it. So we hope he doesn't go anywhere. So we take that heart cut of our rye and we actually put it back into the distilling pot, and we do that process one more time. So we do a double heart cut. And that is the difference between something that goes down smooth down your throat or something that burns a little bit. So something that burns has a little bit of methanol in it, and the true heart cut is going to be very, very smooth down your throat. So that's where the price differentiation comes in. So something that you're paying $50 for compared to something you're paying $25 for.
So not just age.
Not just age, you have that heart cut as well is really important. That's actually the most important part of the distillation process, is where you make that cut. And that is called the art of distilling because it is literally an art. You can't teach someone to have a good sense of smell. That's all done by him, and so it's basically an art. So that comes out of the still after the second heart cut at about 60% alcohol. We barreled that immediately. Just getting back to that, we've got to get these things aging as soon as possible. So I'll show you some of our barrels in the back that we have loaded up. So we are making a rye whiskey. We have 9 barrels full right now. And we have 2.5 years to go before we release our first barrel. So still a little bit of the countdown. That's our first one. Still 2.5 years away, yeah. So we just opened last, June 1st. And we released our products in October and November. So we're pretty hot off the press still. And then we actually liked the flavor of that rye so much that we bottled it. So we actually offer a white rye. So a double heart cut, extremely smooth. Rye itself is a very peppery, earthy grain, so it has a lot of really cool flavor notes to it. So we offer that as well. Our next product that we rolled into was our vodka. So we mashed the triticale grain in the back, transferred up here. We heat this up to 78 degrees again because we're trying to get the same differentiation between that methanol and ethanol. The only difference is to be called vodka, you have to get to 95% alcohol to legally call it vodka. So have you ever seen those old school stills that have like the copper coils going up? That's the vapors traveling up those coils gaining alcohol percentage. That's exactly what these columns do, just in a little bit more modern form. So when we heat that up to 78, those vapors travel through the whiskey helmet, but this time instead of going across, we push this lever, closing off that top pipe and pushing the vapors down this pipe and entering the first rectification column. As the vapors rise through each capsule, they gain alcohol percentage on the way up. So they 50, 52, 54, 56%, down this pipe here, up this column, gaining alcohol percentage again, out the condenser, we get to about 90% our first run through. Then we do that hard cut in our vodka. We put it back in because we're not quite at 95, so put the 90% back in, heat it up again, do the exact same process, and we get to about 95.2% our second run through. We put it in one more time for a third distillation, so triple hard cut, triple distilled product that we offer for our vodka.
What's that get it to you on your third run through?
Just like 95.3. The most you can get it to is 96 ever. So even if we did it 100 times, it would never get. Yeah. So every distillation process is actually stripping the flavor of the grain away from the vapors. So every time you distill, you're getting a little less flavor of the grain. Every time you do a hard cut, you're getting a little bit smoother product. So now you know the difference between smooth and, so a company like Smirnoff, who mass produces like millions of bottles a year, they use a little bit of the head and a little bit of the tail because of the amount of money they accumulate saving that product. And that's why they charge less for their bottle. So, and that's why it burns a little more. But lots of people buy it, so they're $1 billion company, so they know what they're doing apparently. And then we are making gin, so we'll have gin ready this month. So we're going to take that 95% base, we put it into the distilling pot, we heat that up, and when the vapors are traveling down this